Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the first edition of Music Makers. This will be our interview series where we talk with folks in the music industry who make music and work with those who do make music as well. And so I'd like to turn it over to Dave to introduce our first guest.
Yeah, we're pleased to have Jeff Reed with us today. Jeff is the conductor and CEO of the Kentucky Orchestra, Kentucky. He's also the oldest friend of mine that I still have contact with. Jeff and I went to junior high together back in Benton, Iowa. I think the 8th and 9th grade. So those were times that were very important for my musical development. And hanging out with Jeff, I was exposed for the first time, really, in any sort of systematic way, to the Beatles. Jeff Reed is the man who started a lifelong love affair with the Beatles for me back in the day when we were just becoming friends. Jeff had the Red album, the double anthology thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and so we started listening to that, and I recognized a lot of these songs, most of them from when my dad was playing his Frank Sinatra stuff and things like that. I knew them as covers, but I didn't realize that one group was behind all of it. So that was a real eye-opener for me. And then Jeff went on and got the Blue album, and we would just spend hours in his room listening to Beatles and things like that.
Awesome.
So from there, obviously, we went in completely different directions, but music has played a central role in Jeff's life ever since. And he's gone on to do some impressive stuff, and that's why he's here today. We're going to be talking about what he's done professionally, which I just consider to be phenomenal. Starting off in 2000, Jeff founded the Orchestra, Kentucky of Bowling Green, originally Bowling Green Chamber Orchestra, with a initial budget of $15,000. It's slightly more than that now. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Gave the first concert in September 11th, 2000. And when I first read this, I thought, oh, I wonder if that was like a memorial sort of thing. And then it occurred to me that there was nothing to memorialize at that point. It was a year before the terrible terror attack. If I understand it correctly, Orchestra Kentucky now has an annual attendance of approximately 15,000 people. The orchestra is made up of more or less freelancers. These are not people who are part of the orchestra as contract players or things like that. And about 20% of them are from Bowling Green itself. Is that right, Jeff?
That's right. Yeah, so it's we're not a full-time orchestra. First of all, thank you for inviting me, by the way. It's good.
We're very pleased to have you.
Absolutely.
Good to talk to you and be a guest. Yeah, bigger orchestras have a full-time core where maybe 30 or more players who are on salary. Ours is what's called a per-service orchestra, where we pay the musicians needed for a particular performance.
Okay, great. And this is more or less your baby. This is your brainchild, right? And you've come up with a kind of a format that is very community-centered, very eclectic, I would say. And this is something that even got a shout out from the entrepreneur guru, Seth Godin, in his book, Small is the New Big. Because at a time when symphony orchestras across the country are being forced to shrink or close, you're actually in the black and consistently year for year, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting that you opened with talking about the Beatles, because that was really the impetus that got me on this track. I guess it was in 2001. The orchestra had been in existence for a year, and we started out with the usual Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, which, by the way, I love. I have a master's degree in orchestral conducting. I didn't go to music school to perform the Beatles necessarily, right?
Yeah. Right.
But I so we were on that kind of traditional track, and I don't know if this played in Germany, but in the States there was this Beatles One album. It was an orange cover with
Yes.
yellow one.
Yeah.
And there was a TV ad. My children were, I don't know, 7, 8 years old, and my mother was still living. She was around the house, and this commercial would come on, and there would be these little, I don't know, 5-second clips of the number one Beatles tunes. And my kids started to sing along with it. And I thought, the Beatles transcend all ages. And my mother at the time was in her 80s. She loved the Beatles. So I started to think, the Beatles, because of George Martin primarily, his influence, had this wonderful orchestrations on a lot of what they did, especially
absolutely, yeah,
the latter part of their productions, their albums. So I thought, here I am, the conductor at the time of a chamber orchestra. People ask me, what is that? It's just a small symphony orchestra. That's all it is. We started out that way because of economics. It was cheaper to have 30 players on the stage as opposed to 60, which is what we mainly have now.
Uh-huh.
So anyway, I started thinking, that's exactly what the Beatles were using. You can go back, they have the notes. I know you know this from the recording sessions where they have who they hired for a particular session. And you can kind of figure out how many people they were using. And it tended to be around 25 or 30 on even the big pieces.
Uh-huh.
So I thought, that's what I have. So I started to ask around town for, who's the best drummer, who's the best guitar player, who's the best bass player, and I assembled this group of musicians, all local, to put together this first concert. And I gave them the concept, and they were thinking Arthur Fiedler,
Austin Pops,
right. Elevator music. It's going to be square. They didn't want any part of it. I said, no. We're going to do what we can to recreate what you hear on the record. And once they got the concept, we started to do it. The first concert, we had 450 people there. We repeated it the next year, it doubled. We repeated it the following year, it doubled. It just kept snowballing. And here I am 21 years later. We're going to do a Beatles concert next season. I don't do it every season, but it just keeps growing. And now we're selling out, 1,700 seats.
Wow.
So that then, and by the way, I live an hour north of Nashville. So all the stuff that happens in Nashville, I benefit from, because a lot of musicians moved to this area to make it. They didn't. Right. And then they became a realtor or a lawyer.
Right.
They're still great musicians. And that's who I work with.
Yeah.
So that's a lot of competition too, right? I mean, you've got in terms of an audience, they're right there where it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, they can go an hour away and hear, Bridgestone Arena has all the biggies, just like you would see in any major venue in the United States or, Germany or anywhere.
Right.
But then, we had success. So what can we do now? So then we add a 70s show. And then, what do we do now? We add a Motown show. And then I've done about 20 to 25 different shows. I've been all over the United States, from Portland, Maine to Sacramento, California, doing these shows. So it's opened up this whole world for me.
So this retro series that this kind of grew into, this is kind of a road show that you take to other cities. And let me just mention, you were the principal guest conductor of the Symphony Orchestra in Augusta, music director of the North Charleston Pops, but you've been to Greensburg, Knoxville, Louisville, Memphis, Nashville, all, those right in your area, of course. Phoenix, South Bend, Winston-Salem. But to continue your introduction, we're already into the interview, but to continue the introduction, in addition to traveling all across the United States, you've also conducted in Milan, Italy, St. Petersburg. You've been in South Korea. Where were you at in South Korea?
Busan, the
Okay.
second major city, largest
That's right.
city, I think, on the south.
Yes. Yeah.
Tip.
My kids are big K-pop fans, so they're
Oh, yeah.
familiar. They're definitely familiar with Busan. And you conducted twice at the Royal Philharmonic in Royal Albert Hall at the request of Neil Sedaka.
Neil Sedaka, yeah. So that's a whole. I don't know if you want to hear that story.
Oh, we'll definitely hear about that, but that's a story for itself, and we're going to come back to that.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, do I remember you saying something about an encounter at one of those times in London with Andrew Lloyd Webber?
Yes.
What was that story?
The time I almost met Andrew Lloyd Webber. I was in a pub with my agent. I have my agent's from London, and a friend of mine came over from New York, and we were getting ready for the Albert. This is the second Albert Hall concert with Neil. We're in this pub, and I have to say, being an American, the British put up with my, like I have to have ice in my Diet Coke and all that. But anyway, so I have my back to the door, and the agent kicks me, and she says, "Oh my gosh, you won't believe who walked in." And I'm starting to turn to look. She says, "No, you can't look, just wait." So it's Andrew Lloyd Webber and Julian Lloyd Webber, famous cellist. And there's the bartender. Do they call them bartenders? And I don't even know what they call them in pubs. Is that okay?
I don't know either.
Whatever they're called.
Yeah.
And the people at our table, and then the Lloyd Webbers. So a very small crowd. And I wanted so badly to go to meet him, but he was deep in this conversation with his brother. So I didn't. And so that's why I say I almost met him. But it turns out they were there because they were going to the concert. They were Neil Sedaka fans. Yeah.
Okay.
And I didn't realize that at the time, or I would have said, "Hey, I'm going to be conducting this concert."
Yeah. That would have definitely been an opener.
But he exuded a lot of, he looked wealthy.
Yeah, that's probably a reason for that. Okay. And this introduction is stretching out because there's so much to say, but I just want to talk a little bit about your accolades. Okay, the shout out from Seth Godin was 2006 in his 2006 book. 2008, you got the Jefferson Award for Public Service in South Central Kentucky. 2015, you were honored by the University of Louisville as its alumni fellow for the School of Music. And in 2020, probably your real big proud moment was when you were the Hughes and Coleman hometown hero.
You got it, Dave.
Yeah,
that was
it, right? That was kind of the peak. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I'm making fun of it, but a very nice lady, a patron subscriber, nominated me. It was very nice because
it was nice, and they did a nice workup of it.
Yeah.
Watched that and enjoyed it. So you definitely have a certain celebrity status, certainly locally. You're very much in demand nationally and even internationally. So, folks, this is why we're talking to Jeffrey. Now let's get on to the interview. You've part of your concept, something that you came up with, was the idea of talking to people, to celebrities, to stars in the business, and having them do like world premieres of classical works with the Orchestra Kentucky. And if I got this right, your very first time with this was with Neil Sedaka.
Right.
and we listened to Neil Sedaka back in your room. I remember
Yeah.
Laughter in the Rain.
Yeah.
I remember Captain Neil Sedaka is back.
Yeah.
And Sedaka wasn't much of a, I knew 16 a Calendar Girls. I knew, and but he wasn't much of a force for me. We had also already heard Bad Blood. But then I heard that you were actually working with him and developing a relationship. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. I have a good friend, Jeffrey Beagle, who's a pianist, Juilliard grad, and he has got to be the best marketing person that I've ever seen, self-marketer. He put on, I was talking to my wife, I said, Facebook is such a waste of time. Why do I spend all this time on Facebook? Just as I said it, up pops this, I should back him and say he friends conductors all over the world. That's
Okay.
how he markets his playing. He's a friend and he hey, I play such and such piece, hire me kind of thing.
Yeah.
So he had friended me. So just as I said that to my wife about it being a waste of time, he posts this thing about, I met Neil Sedaka at a party. It was actually the producer, can't think of his name. He wrote After the Love Is Gone. Is that right? Earth, Wind and Fire.
Oh, David Foster.
David Foster. He was at Dave Foster's party and he said, I met Neil Sedaka and Neil has written a new piano concerto. If any orchestra is interested in playing it, let me know. And I immediately said, I'll do it if you can get him to Bowling Green, Kentucky. And he said, I think I can. And he did. So Neil and his wife, Liba, who's his lifelong manager, came and he sat in the audience, didn't do a thing. He watched me conduct Jeffrey Beagle playing his piece called Manhattan Intermezzo. And there are recordings of it out there. You could find it easily. It's funny, I met him for lunch when he was here and I said, oh, what a fan I am. And I was. I mean, I appreciate you remembering because I didn't remember when that, love affair with his music happened, but
Right.
He was impressed by that. And I said, I got to ask you, do you get nervous? Because he started when he was like 16 or something.
Yeah.
And he said, only 2 times, when I play for family and friends and when I play at the Royal Albert Hall. And I thought, yeah, I would be too. It seats about 6,000 people. The Beatles song, Now We Know How Many Holes It Takes to Fill the Albert Hall. I mean, all that iconic status of the hall. And I just kind of filed that away. He said, and by the way, I'm going to be at the Albert Hall next month, and just in passing. So we have the concert, everything goes well. I feel like I've met one of my childhood idols. I can die a happy man. I'll probably never see him again.
Yeah.
And 2 days later, I get a call from his wife, and she says, something's happened. The conductor who was supposed to conduct the Royal Phil for Neil's concert has canceled on us. And I asked Neil who he wanted to conduct the concert, and he said, you.
Wow.
Oh my God. That's
mean,
fantastic.
I start crying. My wife is in the other room and thinks my mother has passed or something. And I said, no, I feel like, God is like said, yes, I will make all your dreams come true. Zap.
Right.
She said, I've got it. We got to work out some details, but I'll let you know tomorrow. So she calls, says, pack your bags. So then the terror came in, and I had conducted quite a bit, but nothing like that. And the Royal Philharmonic is one of the top orchestras in the world. And the Albert Hall, is one of the top venues. So I had that double whammy. And a friend of mine said, you know what? Your back's going to be to the audience. You don't have to face 6,000. It was sold out, by the way. You don't have to face. And by the way, you probably noticed being in Europe, there's something about, especially Brits, people in the UK love retro music.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
They are bigger fans than here. So Neil is still a huge deal there, much bigger than he is here.
Okay.
So anyway, And then I said, yeah, but my back's going to be the audience, but I'm going to be facing the Royal Philharmonic. So I started to get really nervous. My wife's a physician, and she said, well, maybe we can try some beta blockers. Let's try them out. And I didn't like the feel of it. I wanted to be in control. No. And then I had, too much information, but diarrhea for like, 4 weeks.
Oh, yeah.
And I get there, and I tell you, I got to the stage entrance, and the guy says, the stage manager said, would you like to see the hall? Well, I had been there as a tourist before, but I said, sure. In fact, I bought a baton. In the gift shop at Albert Hall, you can buy a conducting baton that says, I conducted at the Albert Hall. And I had one of those.
Yeah, awesome.
But it's weird, so weird. So I go out on stage. I got to tell you, I wasn't nervous anymore. And it went really well. The Royal Philharmonic they were very, very kind, and I didn't waste their time. They appreciated that. But Neil, I'd never conducted a concert of Neil's music. I mean, with him.
Yeah.
And he came to rehearsal, and he did his oldies medley, and he said, this is going to be fine. I'm going to go back to the hotel. And I said, but. So his drummer was there and led me through the rest of it. By the way, his drummer, Jim Varley, was the drummer on, do you remember the song Sanford Townsend Band? Smoke from a Distant Fire. He's a drummer on that. Listen to it. It's some of the best drum playing in the 70s pop music.
Yeah.
Wow. So he's his drummer, and he helped me through it. But we're getting ready to go out on stage, and Neil said, oh, I forgot to tell you, you're going to be opening with one of my classical pieces. He was going to come out later. He said, so you need to introduce it and talk, welcome the audience. I said, I wasn't ready for that, but it went well. I didn't make a fool of myself. And I got to go back a second time. So that's how all that started. But then I got to perform with him in other places, and we become very good friends. I talked. Man,
that's just so surreal to me.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, all right. You can imagine, we look at a list of people that you've worked with and just get really big eyes because, a lot of them were already big and already influencing our taste in music back when we were developing a taste in music. So Neil Sedaka was the first one to do this kind of world premiere thing with you, but you've also done this with Jimmy Webb. Mm-hmm. With Keith Emerson, with Peter Tork of the Monkees. Anything that you want to share about any of those experiences would be fascinating to us.
Yeah. The idea is to get people who have made their career in popular music to go back to their roots and explore classical music. So Jimmy Webb, I think he went to the University of Oklahoma, I believe, music major. Neil Sedaka went to Juilliard. I mean, on and on. A lot of these people have classical backgrounds. So it really appealed to them. The idea that, hey, because it's funny, a lot of them, they certainly appreciate the fact that they made it in the field they made it in, where their fame is. But part of them is like, I really haven't done the whole thing. I'm not a Beethoven. I even though it's great to be, Jimmy Webb, who wrote so many great songs.
Yeah.
Are we going to be talking about Jimmy Webb 100 years from now? With all due respect to my friend Jimmy Webb, probably not, but we're going to be talking about Beethoven. So there's that feeling, I think, of I've done really well, and I'm really thankful for that, but there's that something else out there. So,
but I'll tell you this, I bet if we're talking about Jimmy Webb in 100 years, we're not going to be talking about his classical music.
Oh, I completely agree.
No, that's right.
Yeah, no. And I should clarify, they're not doing it to become famous.
Right. They're already famous.
It's more of I'm dabbling in or exploring something that I trained to do that life hasn't led me in that area.
Yeah. This is something fun and new, and want to try it out. Yeah.
And Jimmy did all of the orchestrations on Tramp Shining, that big album with Richard Harris. I mean, he didn't have anybody doing it for him. So he's a very capable person.
Yeah.
I'd really be interested in the connection with Keith Emerson, and Emerson, the late Keith Emerson, of course, of Emerson, Lake and Palmer. How did you make that connection? And I'd be interested to hear more about that collaboration.
Well, same person, Jeffrey Beagle, Jeffrey the pianist, let me know that Keith had written a piano concerto many years before, which I think the video is still out there on YouTube of him. And it was a European orchestra, British orchestra, I don't remember which one, but he had already done it. Yeah. And so I brought Jeffrey to town to perform it, but then had Keith, he wrote a piece that had never been played called Glorietta Pass. It was for a film. And he had a dream of conducting. So I let him conduct it. And I say conduct it, he did a good job, but yeah, it's not his thing, right? So he came to town, did it. He was suffering from a carpal tunnel problem, and as one of the world's greatest keyboard players, it really hurt him. Yeah. He was preparing for a concert in Japan, I believe. His girlfriend's Japanese. I think they were going to do a tour, and he was really worried about being able to play. And when he was here, he didn't play his concerto or anything. He conducted, but he did say, I want to do an encore. And he played a little bit of Tarkus, if you know that.
Oh, sure.
And I think it's like a 20-minute or something thing. It's long. He did maybe 5 minutes. He said it felt so good. He was going to do 5. He did like 10. He just kept going. Yeah. So he left here, and I thought, you know what? Maybe I've been part of him regaining his confidence, but we know what happened.
Yeah, that's right.
He ended his life, and it was out of this fear of failure, is my understanding. It's just so tragic. What a really beautiful person, really kind person. And I'd be interested, we also like to hear more about Peter Tork. And so you talk about Jimmy Webb, when you talk about Keith Emerson, these are people who, on some level, we sort of associate with orchestral arrangements and all of that. Less so with Peter Tork. And so right. How did that happen? Peter had an interest in, I can't remember how I met him, actually. It may have been through Jeff too. There's this whole web of connections, like the 6th degree of separation. Yeah. He had not had a classical background, but he was very much an intellectual. When you met Peter, he's gone too. He struck me as not the goofy guy on the TV show. You would think you were talking to a college professor. Wow. Very brilliant person. And I didn't meet any of the other monkeys, but he had this just an intellectual curiosity and interest in doing more. And he did have help orchestrating what he wrote. He wrote it, I think, and recorded it, and then he gave it to somebody to, actually, that's an interesting story. I think he gave it to Peter Bernstein, whose father was Elmer Bernstein, the film composer. Yeah. So there's a story there too. But anyway, he so that's why he did it. But it was the most modern sounding piece that any of them had written, and very out there. It was
challenging for an audience.
Yeah.
I take it. Yeah.
They came to hear, hey, we're the monkeys. And it's funny. My fondest memory of him was we give all these people an award, Lifetime Achievement Award, and have a banquet. And he told a story, which is great, about the first time the cast met each other, because they were a manufactured band. Right.
Oh, yeah.
They were like Hollywood picked them and put them together.
Right.
And they were eating a salad, and Davy Jones was from the UK, and he was there acting prim and proper, like the British, I guess, or at least supposed to be. And he said, you Yankees are you have the manners of pigs. And he was berating them, and they thought, great, we're in this band with this guy that's going to be a jerk. And Peter said Davey took his salad and dumped it over his head or something. I mean, it was just a joke. And he said after that, we were the best of friends. But when at the banquet, he played, and he said, I'm going to do this in honor of my friend Davy Jones, because he had just passed away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not long before.
Right.
And he did Daydream Believer. And it was touching. I mean, playing it for a friend. But Peter made up the beginning. The famous intro on the keyboard was Peter's
really?
Okay. Addition to the song, which is interesting too. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my Peter Tork story.
That's cool.
Yeah, I know he entered the Monkees thinking that he was going to be part of a band and playing in a band, and Mickey and David were okay. We're actors. David Jones, of course, has been in Oliver and done some musical acting, but Peter Tork was a guitarist. He thought he'd go in there and be playing guitar in the studios, and all that stuff came much later. It was a real eye opener for him. That's interesting. My feeling was always that he was the most approachable, most likable. That was the image that I had of Peter Tork.
Very introverted.
Okay.
Very quiet. Very kind.
Okay.
I got to say, in 22 years of working with professionals, there are a handful of people that I didn't like, and I won't say who they are.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are a handful of people. I have to say, most of them are very gracious, very kind people, which is good.
Yeah.
We want to believe that about them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we do. That's absolutely right. Okay, I'm going to just go down a list, and you can tell me an impression, or if you have an anecdote, then go with it. But these are some of these are just really superstars. Glen Campbell.
Yeah, probably my first celebrity that I worked with.
Okay.
He had his own conductor, but he graciously let me conduct a piece, Bowling Green, which was an Everly Brothers hit about my town.
Yeah.
It was at the early stages of Alzheimer's when he was here.
Yeah.
But it was interesting the way the mind, it's fascinating. When he played the old songs, like By the Time I Get to Phoenix or Rhinestone Cowboy or any of those, it was like flipping the switch.
Yeah.
When they had him on a tour doing some covers of My Morning Jacket, and do I have that right? What's the name of the group?
Well, that is right.
I probably butchering. I think that's right.
No, that is right. Yeah.
They had him do a cover album, which was really good. He put the Glen Campbell spin on a lot of current, at the time in the 90s bands. But he was struggling with those. Short-term memory, long-term memory, like flipping a switch. He told me an anecdote, which I think you'll appreciate, and the people listening to this will appreciate, about when he was a member of the Wrecking Crew. He was first of all guitarist in the Wrecking Crew in LA. His first gig with Frank Sinatra, I can't remember the tune. It had a big guitar solo in it. Anyway, Frank Sinatra came in with an entourage that came to watch him record. And he liked to record with the whole orchestra there and band. Neil Sedaka did that too, by the way, as opposed to recording, orchestra and then laying down the rhythm tracks, etc. Right. So Sinatra comes in, and Glen Campbell's like, oh my gosh, it's Frank Sinatra. I'm such a fan. He's an icon. I get to play on his album, and his position was right next to Sinatra's. So Sinatra's mic was right next to him. He said, I couldn't help it. I stared at him through the whole session. And he said at the end, he saw Sinatra go over and talk to the producer, and they looked back at Glen and pointed at him. And Glen says, I wonder what they're saying about me. I wonder if he liked my playing, So Sinatra leaves, and Glen goes up, and says to the producer, what can I ask you what he said about me? He said, yeah, he wanted to know who the gay guy was who kept staring at me through the whole session.
Oh, man.
Had nothing to do with his playing,
Oh,
Anyway,
my gosh.
that's Frank Sinatra.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Glen Campbell, Jimmy Webb thing, that was no connection between those two for you, right? That was completely.
No, Jimmy Webb, of course, big reason Glen Campbell was a superstar. That happened. I worked with Billy Davis and Marilyn McCoo, the Fifth Dimension. And I think that's how the connection came to Jimmy Webb, because he wrote Up and Away for them.
Yeah,
and,
huge hit for them. Yeah,
and that was the connection. They were wonderful. Her voice was still great.
oh yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. That okay. Well, that takes them from the list. Yeah, Marilyn McCoo, man, had a big crush on her back in the day.
Yeah.
Paul Williams.
Yeah. The shortest guy I've ever met. Super, celebrity. He more of a lyricist.
Yeah.
He told me the story behind Rainy Days and Mondays. He was living with his mother and talking to myself and feeling low, right? Sometimes I'd like to quit. Nothing ever seems to fit. Hanging around, nothing to do but frown. Rainy days and Mondays always get me down. That's the opening line, I think.
Yeah.
He said he was living with his mother. He was sleeping till noon, and just a real slug, not being productive. And he came out one morning and his mother was, berating him for not having his act together. And that's where he came up with, the whole opening line about talking to I know it. I'm sorry. She said something. Paul said, "What did you say, Mom?" And she said, "Nothing. I'm just talking to myself." That's what it was. So she was going to say to him, "You need to get a job," or she did, and he didn't hear it. So then he said, "What did you say?" She said, "Nothing. I'm talking to myself." And then he wrote, "Talking to myself and feeling low." So
That's it.
it's a cool little anecdote.
Oh, for
Yeah.
sure.
He also told the story of when they approached him about Love Boat. He wrote the words to Love Boat and he turned them down. He thought, I don't want to write a theme to a TV show.
Right.
And then he found out how much they were going to pay him and he changed his mind. I guess he got quite a bit of money for that.
I bet.
Yeah. But not a particularly good singer. That wasn't he's not a performer. But his words, and don't know that I'll be able to think of an example. But one of the cool things about his lyrics is that the end of a line becomes the beginning of a next line. And so they connect and wrap through. And I never thought about it. And I wish I could think of an example, but very ingenious. I would put him in the long line of great lyricists of like Alan J. Lerner and those guys who were Ira Gershwin. They didn't just rhyme. They had meaning and painted pictures and all those wonderful things.
Yeah, well, he was behind a number of the hits throughout the 70s that we were listening to, like from Three Dog Night, the Carpenters. Just everybody was recording them, and he was everywhere on the television too. Do you remember 70s variety shows?
Yeah,
Paul Williams was like
Smokey
everywhere.
the Bandit.
That's right.
Smokey the Bandit too. Yeah, and I think it was because he was different looking kind of guy. I mean, he had his own look. He wasn't
I think that's right.
cookie cutter kind of.
No, that's exactly right. And he's always teamed with Pat McCormick in those movies, So Big and Small and all that.
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, and Paul Williams continues to, give back as president of ASCAP and all that.
ASCAP.
Yeah. It's a very influential figure, even in the
promised
21st century.
a piece, by the way. He says he's going to write me a piece for the orchestra, and he never has.
Well, there's still time, but that's
get back to him on that. All right. Next one. A Gatlin brother, Larry Gatlin.
I've worked with them twice. What's impressed me about him, he's larger than life. He just exudes personality.
Okay.
He's a funny guy. My band, that I talked about earlier on the Beatles show, they're called the Rewinders, rewinding time. We were in an airport in Nashville getting ready to go somewhere for a concert, and the Gatlin brothers were on the same plane. And one of my singers said, gosh, that's the Gatlin brothers. And I said, yeah. I said, he won't remember me, but I'll go up and ask if he would mind getting a photo with you. So I went up, I said, you don't remember me? You did a concert with me. And he said, oh yeah, I remember. They're being nice. I said, but my friend here would like to get a photo. And he said, sure. He said, come on over. So my friend says, well, where would you like me to stand for the photo? And Larry said, way over there. That's his sense of humor. Just very larger than life. I guess I said that.
Yeah.
That's what I remember about him.
Okay.
Yeah.
You worked with Melissa Manchester once.
Very kind. Yeah, Don't Cry Out Loud. And what else? She wrote with Kenny Loggins.
Midnight at the Oasis?
No. Well, there's Midnight Blue is one of her songs, but the one that Kenny recorded with the Fleetwood Mac.
Whenever I Call You Friend.
Whenever I Call You, yeah. She's a writer on that. A lot of people don't know that she has writing chops. And again, very nice lady. Came from a classical home. Her father played bassoon in the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra.
Oh, geez.
Okay.
She was backup singer for Barry Manilow.
Right.
Did not know that.
Long line of those experiences.
Yeah.
Another thing I'll say, she commented about when she was a celebrity, and I've learned this from working with other people. Janine Turner's one. She's not a musician, but actress from Northern Exposure. Remember Northern Exposure?
Oh yeah, loved it.
The short hair. I had a crush on her.
Oh, I did too.
Funny, yeah, it's funny because I know her really well. I still talk to her, and I've never told her that. So she sees this, she'll know I have a crush on her. My wife knows, and she understands. But anyway, now I've forgotten why I brought that up.
Well, before you move on, where do you know her from?
I reached out and asked her to come to town and do a concert of Broadway stuff. She had some Broadway experience.
I did not. Okay, did not know that.
Yeah. The reason I brought up about Melissa is both of them were talking about when you're in that limelight, the struggles of weight. They basically starve themselves.
Yeah.
It's really sad because there's a certain picture of what people should be like. And I remember Melissa talking a lot about that. It's just somebody give that lady a cookie, that was her thing. It's like having this things out of perspective just to keep your job it's awful.
Yeah.
So
I'm sure that's true. BJ Thomas.
Yeah, what a great guy. The story I have to tell you is we're off stage waiting for the concert to start, and I don't know how it came up, but Dolly Parton was going through a low point in her career, and she called BJ up and said, I need a hit song. My career is dying. And BJ said, you know what? I was going to go into the studio and record a song, but I think you'd be really great on this song. I'll just give it to you. And it was Here You Come Again.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Holy cow.
Yeah.
So that says everything you need to know about BJ Thomas. He was that kind. I had him booked to come back, and COVID hit. And I always know on my cell phone if it's somebody like that because it'll say call blocked,
Yeah.
And whenever I get that, I know it's going to be somebody. Well, he says, hello, Jeffrey. it's BJ. Well, I knew there's only one BJ.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm going to have to cancel the concert. At my age, my band is older. We can't get out during the pandemic. And I said, I completely understand. And so he never came, but that's for him to call. He could have had his agent call me.
Yeah.
For him to call and take the time. And he didn't get off the phone in 30 seconds. It was a nice conversation.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
And then he passed away,
Yeah.
No.
he's gone. But one more quick story about him. He went to Burt Bacharach's house to audition for Raindrops Keep on
Yeah.
Your Head. He had laryngitis, he said. When he went,
jeez.
he almost canceled, and he said, I'm going to just get through this. And he recorded it with laryngitis. And then for the movie, and then he recorded it again, I think. But there's a lesson there, perseverance, which I will tell you a story about perseverance if we talk about Mary Wilson. But anyway.
And we're going to, yeah.
Okay.
Let's talk about Mary Wilson.
Okay.
Of the
Mary
Supremes?
Wilson. Yeah. So I have a good friend who's in marketing, lives in New York. He does a lot of orchestra marketing. And he was working with the Detroit Symphony. Detroit Symphony, top tier orchestra, American orchestra. And they had Mary Wilson booked. Now, she's a hometown girl, right? Detroit.
Right. Yeah.
The Supremes. And she had never performed with the Detroit Symphony. And she's in her 70s at the time. So she's coming to perform. Well, she didn't have a conductor. So my friend is discussing this concert with the Detroit Symphony management, and he says, well, I have somebody who can conduct the concert. And they said, does he have any charts to fill out the concert? And he said, I'm sure he does. Call him. So I get a call from the Detroit Symphony, and they say, Jeff Reed, we're looking for a conductor for a Mary Wilson concert, but that's only an hour of the concert. We need somebody to fill about 30 minutes of music. We'd like music from the 60s, Supremes 60s. Do you have any arrangements? And I said, absolutely. I didn't have one. I said, absolutely. And then I said, when is this? And they said, 6 months from now. So I tell people, my children and others, never say no, find a way. I would have been in trouble if they had said this weekend. Then I would have said, I just lied to you. But then I got the arrangements done and I got to do it. But out of that concert came other opportunities with her. She was a partier. She's since passed too. What a surprise when she passed away, because she was very healthy, very active on stage, moving like crazy. I think she was pretty much into fitness. But after a concert, she would call and say, no, don't, where's the party? Don't, I'll be there as soon as I can, because she would always wait around at the end of a concert and greet every single audience member who wanted to.
Wow.
That's awesome.
That's very cool.
So, so an hour later, she would show up, and it's not that she drank too much or anything. She just liked to be around people and celebrate and share her kindness. Let me tell you a story. I'm sorry, I have so many stories.
No, this is why you're here.
So we go into a local restaurant. Keith Emerson said they had the best cheeseburgers he'd ever had. But anyway, we take her in, and very late at night after the concert, and the orchestra manager, me and my family were there, and the music was loud, but nobody was in this. It was a sports bar. And so the orchestra manager said to the manager, would you mind turning the music down so we can have a conversation? This is kind of a VIP and we'd like to be able to talk. And the manager said, I can't do that, but who is it? And he said, Mary Wilson. Who's Mary Wilson? The Supremes. Who are the Supremes?
Wow.
So anyway, makes you realize all this is relative. Fame is relative, and past. I mean, what the most successful women's singing group in history, right?
Absolutely.
Popular history.
That's right.
But it was fun because what happened was, on this, whatever they were playing, the music, all these Motown songs kept coming on. And then she started to talk about the groups.
Oh man.
and the stories. So, Stevie Wonder's favorite candy bar was the second knob from the right because he's blind. So he could go up and buy it and get his candy bar. And, Michael Jackson and all these superstars.
Yeah.
She was
Awesome.
in on that and part of it. It's interesting. She called Diana Ross Diane. Her real name was Diane Ross. She always called her Diane. Interesting that she became Diana. I don't know
Yeah.
how or why.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. I have one more question because this one just threw me off a little bit. I saw that you worked with Chuck Barris,
Yeah.
and the only Chuck Barris I could think of was the Gong Show Chuck Barris, and I could not imagine
That's
what
it.
you'd be doing with him. But I checked it out. He wrote Palisades Park.
You did.
So no, for that was the music connection that I was able to discover.
No, that's not the reason, but he did
Okay.
write Palisades Park. Unfortunately, Georgia also came out at the same time and kept Palisades Park from being number one. So he almost had a number one song.
Yeah.
No, what happened was Chuck's wife, Mary, is from Bowling Green,
Okay.
and that's his connection. So he was here, very successful author, New York Times best-selling author.
Yeah.
And he was here for a book fair. And he was at the author's party, standing alone by himself. No one was talking to him. And I thought, that's Chuck Barris. So I struck up a conversation, and we had this retro series going on, right?
Yeah.
All these 60s, 70s concerts. And I said, would you ever consider emceeing a concert? And he said, absolutely. So he came back and hosted 3 or 4, maybe 5 shows.
Wow.
And
Fantastic.
we became very, very, very good friends. We talked once a week. I continue to speak to his wife. He was a pretty elderly person when I met him.
Yeah.
Lived to be 80 some years old.
Yeah.
Very, very introverted, very unlike his.
Which is just completely, that's difficult to believe, but.
And his whole, he did this thing.
Yeah.
I said, he said, what are you talking about? I said, your hair. He didn't remember even doing it. It was a nervous tick, like the clapping and all that.
Oh my
But a
God.
genius. He told me the story, the key to the newlywed game. Yeah.
Yeah.
The success of that was they would interview 3 couples and say, if you win this game, what's the one prize you would like to win? And he would put together 3 couples that had the same answer. So if they said, new washer and dryer,
Oh yeah.
he would put all of them together. And he said they fought like cats and dogs over the washer and dryer, and they would get mad at their spouses because they were going to lose their favored. So he was just an extremely brilliant guy who worked his way up from the mailroom, all the way to the top. He was part of the payola scandal interview.
Oh, I did not know that.
He wasn't a focus, but he was hired to go on to the American Bandstand set to monitor them so that there wasn't any of this stuff going on. And he got to know Dick Clark, and they were lifelong friends to the very end through that connection.
Yeah.
But great guy. He did sing with the orchestra. He sang Bad, Bad Leroy Brown. I thought that was perfect for him. He wrote the words on his hand because he made a big deal out of having to read them. And just, again, an iconic person.
Yeah. Well, that's just so incredible. Man, you're living the dream. I just think it's so fantastic that that you're doing this and having these opportunities and are
Absolutely.
able to tell us some of the stories about the people that we have been looking up to for decades now,
For sure.
So this was fascinating. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. I hope I didn't bore you with all these.
No, not at all.
It was great. It was great.
I've had a great life. I'm very thankful for it. And I realize Not everybody gets to do what I've done. And I don't take it lightly, and I'm just thankful. You know, I could die tomorrow. I don't want to die tomorrow, but I could die tomorrow and feel like I've had a full life. So,
Well, it's just very accomplished, and I'm so proud to call you a friend.
you
And
too.
we definitely need to do some more Zooming.
Absolutely. Well, thank you
Uh,
both. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. It was a blast. It was great
Thanks.
meeting you.
You too. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Bye-bye, Jeff. Thanks again.
Take care.
Bye-bye.